Hello and welcome to the Red Jacket Club. My name is Andy. I'm here with my friend Brendan. This is where we talk Cardinals baseball. There's still a little quiet in the streets, but we're excited today. We got some fun topics to talk about. We're going to talk about the outfield. This is the 11th episode of the Red Jacket Club. We're shooting this on 111. How about that? 2023. Getting the new year going. Um, Brendan, how are things, man? I'm still just aching to get things done. I mean, the Correa deal, we'll talk about it a little bit later, is finally over, which felt like it would be the last thing to happen before the offseason was over. Finished a little bit before schedule, as it was taking forever for them to figure that out. But how are you feeling? Are you as anxious as I am to get things going?
Yeah, man, I need baseball, and I've been saying that for the last couple episodes now. Uh, my fantasy baseball league is starting to look at trades and stuff like that. I'm just itching for baseball because I didn't play any fantasy hockey this year, so now I'm in a weird in between phase of football and baseball, and it's just
Hmm.
like I don't have anything right now. I mean, I have started watching the Blues more. As you can see, I'm rocking the Blues hat today.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I'm just ready. As much as we're tuned in to baseball and Cardinals and just the MLB in general, I'm just so ready for it.
I wish I could get into any other sport. And I'm gonna sound like a St. Louis heathen, but like I don't watch the Blues a whole hell of a lot. Um, I don't watch football a whole hell of a lot. Even when the college football championship was just on, I mean, obviously it wasn't really a fun game to watch because it was so one-sided, but
Yeah.
I had that on for like 2 minutes. I was like, this is boring. Like it's so weird to tell people that their sports that they love are boring, and then I'm like, baseball's the best because
Yeah, yeah,
it's clearly a boring sport, but I love
yeah.
it. Yeah, man, I'm stuck in super limbo because, like I said, I don't watch anything else really in terms of sports. So like I'm just ready to get going.
Yeah, I think we're about 44 days away from spring training, which means probably about another 10 days from the World Baseball Classic. So
Yeah,
just hang on
pitchers and
tight.
catchers though, they start reporting early, or well, like mid-February. So
Probably, I would assume now that I know more about like the arbitration process, I would assume it's like immediately following the arbitration stuff, which happens. I think it's up until the February 15th is when all the arbitration
yeah,
cases end. So
yep, that's exactly what I was seeing is when most teams are planning on getting their pitchers and catchers going down to Florida and Arizona. So I am lost, man. I don't know what else to do but talk about it. So we'll get right into it. We're like I said talking about the outfield today. There's a lot of unanswered questions about the Cardinals outfield. A lot of injuries last year, which was unfortunate. Some people shined, which we'll talk about. Other people we still have questions on. And in terms of the Cardinals in general, it's the outfield has been kind of an outlier, or not an outlier, but just kind of up in the air for the past couple of seasons. I mean, we've tried to figure out how to get some experienced depth out in the outfield, and it just hasn't panned out. I'm thinking of Jason Hayward, Dexter Fowler, and even though Corey Dickerson did start to figure it out toward the end of the season, there was still a lot of questions on whether he would figure it out at all. I mean, a lot of last season he was pretty cold until he got closer to the playoffs. So it's weird. I mean, we unfortunately got rid of Bader, but I think we got something better in return. But we have so many young players that have such good talent, but it's weird to think that this outfield has so many questions because of that young talent. So, do you have any initial thoughts that you kind of want to get off your chest, Brendan, before we start going kind of player by player?
I was just gonna say that thank God we did get rid of Bader for Montgomery because imagine some of the Cardinal fans that are begging for a trade right now. Imagine if we still had Bader in center and we didn't have Montgomery. Like they'd be calling for who knows what if that move didn't
Somebody's
happen.
head.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So I mean, I miss Bader. We loved him in center field, but yeah, it was definitely a move that made the most sense for our outfield. And like you said, the last 3, 4 seasons, we've just had very unlucky uh, very unlucky situations when it comes to the outfield. So hopefully, looking forward to this year, we won't have as many injuries, and at least hopefully 2 of the 3 starters will click, and then we won't have to worry about it too much. But we'll see.
Yeah, and honestly, if just a few adjustments are made and one of them can stay healthy, I think that we obviously have one of the best defenses in the league because our defense won the Gold Glove, the all-team Gold Glove or whatever they're calling it over there at
Right.
Rawlings. But like, yeah, we still need to figure out what is going to happen with 3 of these guys, and they need to click, if not all at the same time, like 1/3 of the season, 1/3 of the season, 1/3 of the season, or 2 at once. Like something's got to happen, and
Yeah.
we'll start with Tyler O'Neill, who I've written down as my spark plug pick of the year. I think this guy is going to come back with a vengeance. Just because I know that he's likely frustrated with how things went last year. He finished up the season with a slash line of 228, 208, and 392. That makes out an OPS of 700 and 14 home runs over the season last year, which is just obviously completely down from 2021. And he obviously had the injury bug. He couldn't stay off the IL. But I don't think that that's something that's going to continue for Tyler. It's just it hasn't been a problem before, and I'm sure he's worked it out. And the reason I think he's going to work his way back, and I'm interested just based off of reading your notes for today, what you think about this, but I feel like he's got the most um, opportunity to see pitches with the addition of Wilson Contreras. So I feel like the lineup is building to give him the opportunities that he needs to get back to 2021, and I think that the numbers will shake out to rectify what happened last year. What do you think about how he shapes into this lineup, especially coming off of all these injuries?
I mean, I obviously love that he's gonna probably bat right after Contreras, and then that means that it's gonna Contreras is following up with the duo of Arenado and Goldie. But the most important question is: was 2021 an outlier, or was it a foreshadowing? So what I mean by that is, we're kind of looking back at this last season as like, oh, this was an outlier season. He'll get back to that 850 OPS, 900 OPS type guy. But the biggest question mark is he really that kind of guy, or was that season the outlier for him? And I have a couple of things that kind of back up that. And I don't want to say that O'Neill's going to have a bad season, but I'm just kind of looking at this objectively. And while he still does have some really good peripheral stats, one of those stats being what's called expected weighted on base average. So basically, it kind of takes into account a player's skill rather than the actual results. So basically, he's hitting the ball hard, kind of thing. His launch angle looks nice. He's fast. It takes those, so he's doing well there. But there's another stat that's called batting average on balls hit in play. And now this stat is what really jumps out to me because in his big season in 2021, he had a 366 batting average on balls hit in play. And typically what that means is it's going to regress back to the mean. And the mean for the league is around about 290. So we were due to see some kind of regression in that stat. And while injuries probably, I will say injuries were probably the biggest issue for him just staying consistent, seeing consistent pitching. That's definitely something to note that regression was kind of expected this year, but I don't know. Do you think it was mainly because of injuries, or are you seeing kind of what I'm seeing with my stats?
Uh, you make a good point, but I really do think that it's the lack of consistency and being off the everyday. Because when you look at what he was doing in 21, he finally got to that point where he was playing every day. Uh, Before that, he was platooning. He was in and out, and still put up good numbers. But it was when he got that opportunity to put up consistent at bats that he showed he was the one power hitter that he obviously is built to be, and has the speed to be a Gold Glove outfielder. Everything just clicked. So I think the fact that everything unclicked, the light switch went off last season. All he needs to do is just flip it right back on. I don't think that last season was foreshadowing, to use your analogy. I think it was an outlier. I think that all he needs to really do is just work on some of those areas that he is obviously just missing by not having the amount of at bats that he needed. But once he gets back to that point, I think we're seeing the same guy that we saw in 21. So it's definitely for every one of these guys that we're going to talk about today, it's up in the air. Like, he has to put in the work. And that's one of my favorite things that I like about this outfield, is that, like, yes, we've tried to get depth in the past, like I said, but these guys are young, and they are like chewing to get a spot every day. So, like, they're gonna have to perform, and with that, like, there's no bullshit. Like, you have to go out and you have to play your best. And I know that he can do that. I know that he has done it, and that's why I think he's going to be the next big player for us, and possibly get more MVP votes like he did in 21.
Yeah, and you and I both know that when it comes to baseball, consistent at bats is one of the most important things, especially at the major league level. I'm just going to read his injuries in 2022. He was hurt in mid-May, came back in June, hurt later in June, and then activated in July, hurt in September, and then didn't return. So that's about the most inconsistent you can get with injuries. And with the stats I was talking about with BABIP is what people call. Um, I'm not I'm not necessarily saying he's gonna have a bad season. It's just looking at it objectively, those are kind of the stats that I'm looking at. So
Yeah, and just to kind of go off of that, I mean, don't things regress to the mean if you're not on the field every day? I mean, like, he's a ton of fun to watch, so they're gonna give him the opportunities. I don't think last season takes away anything from Tyler O'Neill,
yeah,
unlike a lot of people are saying it will. But, like, he's obviously a specimen of a human. All he just needs to do is stay healthy, and I think that he starts to go back. Obviously, like, there's the mental aspect of thinking that will I get back there, I guess, kind of thought process. But,
right.
like, I don't see this being the issue. Like, I don't know. I just, it's a weird feeling, because it's just something that it's something that I just feel like, I don't know how else to explain it, because it's just a matter of that he wasn't on the field, is
Yeah.
really my opinion.
Yeah, I think if he does start to show any kind of struggle, I kind of like the idea of platooning him with Burleson and giving Burleson some kind of chance in the big leagues. Where I kind of thought going into the season that we would sign like a veteran lefty that could kind of play that role, that platoon lefty kind of role. Um, but I think if O'Neill shows any kind of basically any kind of hint from last season, then that's where Burleson's going to get his shot.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And like I said, I I think, unless there's this certain player that apparently is being reported, I think that the team that we have is what we're going to see on opening day.
Yeah,
So I maybe didn't say it so eloquently before, but what is so interesting about this team in general is that, and then the outfield especially, is that there's so much young talent, that there is so many opportunities for players to take a spot. And if you're thinking about that from the mindset, like think about back in high school when you were playing high school baseball and you're like, "Oh, I don't have that long to be in the starting nine. Like I have to prove it every day in order to be here." It's like heightened to a million in the MLB. So like that's what I think is going on in Tyler O'Neill's brain. Like he knows that I don't think he's thinking that he's in Paul DeYoung's situation because Paul DeYoung's actually having that conversation. But I think he feels that it just kind of putting myself in his shoes. And so I think that that's what's going on in the back of his head. And he's like, I'm not going to let that happen. Nobody's taking my spot. I'm meant to be here. I'm meant to be on this team. And I think that that's just going to fuel his fire.
I sure hope so, because if we get that 2021 Tyler O'Neill, we better look out, because that offense would be insane.
Yeah. I mean, you got Arenado Contreras or Arenado Goldschmidt Contreras O'Neill. And like I said, with those guys there, like if you flip flop them, like you put O'Neill in front of Contreras, like having to pitch to O'Neill, like that was
For
the
a
biggest
while, for a
the big
while, O'Neill was split in between Goldie and Arenado.
right. And the biggest problem for him this year was that the amount of fastballs that he was seeing went way down. And
Right.
obviously that's going to completely affect the way that you have to approach your at bats. You're going to be guessing so much more. You're not going to be thinking that you're going to see a pitch to hit. So I think that he's set up so perfectly that if I mean every piece falls into place, that nothing's going to be out of the cards for Tyler O'Neill this season.
Yep.
The only last point, and it's a completely up in the air speculation, prediction, who knows, whatever you want to call it, it's full crap. But the only time the Cardinal or St. Louis rather has seen a 30-30 player was in 1922. And by 30-30, I mean 30 steals and 30 home runs. And I was just looking into it because I was like, this is the guy that could do that. Now, I don't know if he'll do it next year because obviously he's got
Especially
some.
with his hamstring, I kind of don't see him running as much, to be honest. But
Oh, I think he's fine. But what I would love to see is somebody do it. Like even Tommy Edman can do it. He got 32 steals last season, and we'll talk about that next time we talk about the infield. But like just having a player like that would be so much fun. It's just something to chew on, something to think about in the back of your mind. And that player was Ken Williams. He was on the St. Louis Browns. I think he had like 39 home runs and 37 steals or something crazy like that
dang.
way back in the day. So, yeah, I mean, I think Tyler O'Neill's that player. I know, like, yeah, he's been hurt, but he's that Greek god of a specimen. Like he'll be fine. I think he'll be fine.
Yeah, we'll see.
Let's move on. There's a guy who is just blowing up Twitter right now. Like everybody's talking about this guy. Even um, podcast friends, I guess you could say, we're not really friends with him, but Talking Baseball was talking about Lars Nootbaar today and the video that went around with about him and his mocap batting practice. Um, but this guy, Lars Nootbaar, is just off the charts. Like he's I think one of the most fun players. Like I think he's a tamed down Jose Martinez, but he kind of gives me Jose Martinez vibes as like a
Yeah,
clubhouse
carries the
presence.
clubhouse. Yeah.
Yeah, and so he's just exciting, and he's got several things that he's got going for him. He's definitely earned himself a spot in right field. I think he's a certified like lock to play every day. But in terms of how he finished up last year, he finished up with a 228 average with a 340 on base and a 448 slugging, which got him an OPS of 788, which is good, good average ball player. But when he sees more opportunities, I feel like he's just gonna get again more consistent at bats. He's gonna blow up. I know I said Tyler O'Neill's my spark plug, but like this guy could definitely be like the Cardinal next year. How are you feeling about Lars Nootbaar? I know I think we're talking about the same characteristic or spark plug pick, but for two different players.
Yeah, I mean, obviously everyone loves Lars Nootbaar. The main thing that sticks out to me is how good his Statcast numbers are. He hits the ball hard. He's in the top percentages of average exit velocity, max exit velocity, hard hit percentage, and then that expected weighted on base percentage I told you about. His walk percentage is way up there. He doesn't chase pitches. He's I don't know. He's one of those guys. He's just a very professional hitter, and all those stats kind of show that. Even though he only has a 228 batting average, kind of an old school stat, you'd like to see that come up a little bit, and I think it will whenever the shift goes away this season. So there's really not much to say about him other than, I mean, I just wish him luck this year. I hope he kind of repeats what he did last year. He hit 14 home runs, and I don't have the games up right now. But not a full season, I don't think, right? Was it a full season that he was in the league?
He had to play a lot because Carlson was out.
Yeah.
But I don't.
At least 3 quarters of the season, he hit 14 home runs.
Yeah.
I would like for him to hit 20. I think you said you didn't think he'd get up to that point.
Yeah, I'm not sure in terms of power. I mean, based off of what he's apparently doing with his underwear batting practice, it
Yeah.
sounds like he's really working on that exit velo, which is obviously going to help when it comes to getting balls out of the yard. I'm certainly, I'm sure he'll get up to 20, but I'm not sure how far he's going past that. I'd like him to be more doubles in the gap kind of guy,
Yeah.
because he's obviously he's tall, he's lanky, he's got some speed. Just like don't focus on hitting the ball out so much. Be more focused on getting into scoring position because as soon as one of these other guys comes up who can knock the ball over the infield, that is not allowed to play in the outfield anymore. I think that he would be able to score pretty easily. So, yeah, I definitely think that he could get up to 20, but I hope that that's not his focus this offseason. More of a doubles in the gap kind of guy.
Yeah, and just stick to like his approach that he had. Like I said, his
Hmm.
walk rate was way up there. It was like
Right.
14%. I think league average is around 8 or 9. I'm
Hmm.
pretty sure, and so that's a very significant walk rate. So if he can just keep up kind of the good at bats, other than that, I really don't have much to say about him other than we all love him and we all just hope he does really well this year.
Yeah, the only last thing, and we'll talk about it more a little bit when we get into Dylan Carlson, but I just kind of hope that he stays in right field. I like him better in right field. I know that he can play center field just fine, but I think that the outfield meshes better when he's a corner outfield guy, Dylan with in center field and Tyler in left. But that being said, we can jump right into Dylan Carlson. This is the guy who I think could be like he had an okay year last year. It wasn't anything extravagant, but I think he could be like the comeback player of the year, I guess you could say.
Could be, yeah.
Yeah. And it's just going to take a few like adjustments, a few different ways to approach the game. Before we get into that, he finished last season with a 236 average, 343 on base percentage with a 380 slugging percentage. That's an OPS of 695, which was just complete down from last year. The power was missing, and but the interesting part about like when I was looking into his fan graphs, not a lot changed year to year. Like his
Hmm.
strikeout percentage was down. He was swinging at more pitches in the zone, and his contract contact percentages were up. And I was like, so then what the hell's going on? And the one thing that I noticed is that he was swinging at a lot of pitches that were either outside of the zone or on the outside part of the plate. And when I was going through the MLB film room, which if you haven't looked into that or if nobody's looked into that, it goes like you can pick pitch by pitch what you want to see. And I was looking at all these ground balls. And a lot of the ground balls that he was hitting, he was rolling over on. And if you know as a player, if you're early on those outside pitches, you're going to roll over all day. And so he's just grounding out to the first baseman, to the second baseman, If he's on the right side, he's grounding out to the shortstop. Like this is something that he just needs to work on. And if he works on it, and instead of trying again, like Nootbaar, if he goes into an approach of just doubles in the gap or line drives, thinking about line drive hitting, I think Dylan Carlson just boosts his numbers tenfold because if he just focuses on staying back and driving the ball instead of trying to be quick to it or whatever he's doing, he'll come out on the other side a better offensive player.
Yeah, I really don't think he needs to change too much. Obviously, he can't be rolling over the ball like you're saying. But his biggest excuse is the sophomore slump is real. Something that I forgot, and I'm sure a lot of people forgot, is he finished third in Rookie of the Year in 2021. And so I definitely believe in the sophomore slump. I mean, we've seen it time and time again of these players come up and have immediate success. And then their sophomore season, they just kind of, he wasn't like a absolute terrible player this year. He did some things for us in center field whenever Bader left, so he kind of took on that role. You'd like to see him to get over like that 700 OPS range, but he was a very average to just below average player this year when it comes to offense. Um, but as far as like what happened in 2022. I mean, I know the league threw him more fastballs, but not by a big percentage. The StatCast numbers regressed a little bit, but he never really was a StatCast kind of guy. He's not the guy that's gonna light up the StatCast numbers until it comes to his arm. His arm is in the top percentile.
Mhm.
But I mean, strikeouts went down 5%. Like that's good,
Right.
His BABIP regressed to the mean, which I was talking about earlier with O'Neill, but nothing that really stands out as being like, oh, he's got to work on this. So I really don't think there's too much to change. I just hope he comes in and he just grinds it out and hopefully has a decent season, a little bit better than last year.
Well, yeah, that's basically what I was mentioning is that ground ball rate, I guess, was the only thing that really looked different. And so if
Yeah.
he's focusing more on staying back on the ball, and what I also was noticing is that his hip, and this is just because he's got a propensity to be a left-handed hitter. His hips are flaring out well before the ball even gets to the plate. So he's thinking of pulling the ball a whole hell of a lot, and that's obviously just not going to work on outside pitches. So that's the only thing I'm seeing that he really needs to focus on. In terms of his defense, this is where I was really interested in knowing a little bit more about Dylan Carlson. And I think the reason that I said I like Lars Nootbaar in right is because I really like Dylan Carlson in center field. And that makes a lot more sense as to why John Mozeliak was saying Dylan Carlson's our center fielder. We don't want to give him up for Juan Soto. But when I was looking at his defensive runs saved, which is obviously a defensive metric to grade how well an outfielder or an infielder, just any fielder in general, is playing, it's a positive or negative number measuring how many runs a fielder has saved his team or cost his team. So with his defense, Dylan Carlson in center field has 6 defensive runs saved compared to Lars Nootbaar's 4 defensive run saves in outfield in general. There was no defensive run saved in center field technically for Lars Nootbaar. So there's obviously a disparity between how much playing time each player has had in that role, but I think that Dylan just feels more comfortable there than he does as a corner outfielder, and he's clearly shown it. Like the play that comes to mind is the one where the ball. I don't know if he was playing shallow or what, but it clearly got over his head, one hopped the wall or hit off the wall, and he just came in and picked it up and threw it basically like Rick Ankiel from the warning track to third base and got the guy out at third, but in like a matter of a few feet,
Yeah.
he clearly got him out. There are other plays that he's like made almost Tatis-esque jumps in center field, which is kind of weird to think about, but like I guess the ball was going over his head again, and I remember him just like sprawling out and didn't necessarily dive, but just jumped in the air and caught the baseball. I mean, this guy's a good center fielder, and I think that that's just where he deserves to be based off of his defensive metrics.
Yeah, he definitely proved it to us that he can play center field. He's not gonna make it look as pretty as Bader probably, but he's still gonna get the job done out there,
Hmm.
and it's definitely not gonna be like a detriment.
Right.
But
He's got so much range too for not
yeah,
looking like a guy who would. Like Bader looked like a guy who had speed. And Dylan doesn't really look that way, but I mean, he gets to a lot of baseballs that are not typical.
he's
Um,
made quite a few of those like shoestring catches that I can
yeah,
remember. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Um, so other than that, there are the two bench players that I think will probably platoon the most out in the outfield, and that's Juan Yepes and Alec Burleson. Yepes we'll talk about first. He finished last season with a 253 average with a 296 on base percentage and a 447 slugging, which is an OPS of 742. He had a pretty good start. He's obviously got a small sample size, but I like that he's versatile. He's able to play infield. I think he played at third a little bit too, but I know he played first. He can play the corner outfield, so he's got a lot for him, and he can obviously DH as well, showing that he's got no problems with pressure in the playoff coming in, pinch hitting in the playoffs. I'm pretty sure to hit that home run. Um, so I like that he has the confidence and the wherewithal to be up here. I'm just not sure how much he outplays the other guys unless they're hurt or aren't performing themselves. But what are your thoughts on Juan Yepes?
Yeah, Juan Yepes is another really exciting player. When he was down in minor leagues, he wasn't really considered a top prospect at all. But as he aged in the minor leagues, we started seeing bigger and bigger numbers from him. I think he had like a season of 27 home runs. So he's got a ton of potential in the big leagues if he can just kind of tap into that power. He exceeded rookie status, so this will officially be his sophomore season. I was kind of looking into how maybe like him and Burleson platooning into that DH role. I think he kind of is a true DH. I mean, he can get the job done in the corner outfield, but um, I think DH is probably his position. But I looked into it, and he's one of those guys that had a reverse splits, which means he hits righties better than lefties,
Hmm.
which is really a good sign because most likely those lefty splits will go up because typically for a right-handed hitter, it's easier to see the ball from a lefty. So I think that's a really good sign that he had those reverse splits. I love that Pujols was here this season and he was attached to his hip. His peripheral numbers look good. His BABIP, his strikeout percentage, a stat called ISO, which measures raw power. Um, yeah, I don't know. I really like Yepes. I think he's gonna have a solid season. He's the type of role player we need. He can fill in for Goldie when he needs a rest day at first. And yeah, we'll find spots for him. And I think he's all for the later game pinch hitting role as well.
Hmm. Yeah, and then for Alec Burleson, unfortunately, for this outfield discussion, I think he's the weakest link. But that's not to talk anything on Alec Burleson. He's still finding his legs up in the major leagues. He finished last season with a 188 average, 264 on base percentage, with a 271 slugging percentage, with an OPS of 535. Um, and he's obviously just going to continue to get more opportunities. I think he has the smallest sample size out of him and Yepes.
Hmm.
And so I don't think that there's much for us to really judge him on. But in terms of where I think that he'll get the most time, it's either DHing or playing the corner outfield. I would think they would pick Yepes over him to play first. Um, but then again, who knows? Like I said, we have such a small sample size; it's hard to really get a good tell on Alec Burleson.
Yeah, we can't really tell much. He did not exceed rookie limits, so personally I consider 2022 a wash season for him. Just kind of get a taste of the big leagues, and we see that whenever September call-ups happen. He did have a 905 OPS in AAA in 2022, so he is kind of one of our bigger prospects. He was drafted in the same class as pretty sure Jordan Walker and Mason Wynn and
Hmm.
that whole group. So um, yeah, excited for him. I think we'll find opportunities for him if O'Neill's, like I said earlier, if O'Neill does have any of those signs of regression or kind of staying the same, I think Burleson will get plenty of opportunities out in left field. Uh, and then, yeah, he'll slot into DH whenever Yepes is needing a break, or they might just platoon him straight up for if there's a righty in there, throw Burleson in, lefty, throw Yepes in. So we'll see. But that's kind of where what I see him doing. But to be honest, I did think that earlier I also said that I thought we'd get a veteran lefty, and this is kind of the guy that I thought would get more consistent at bats in AAA before making the full leap into the majors. But so far, it's looking like he will be on that 26-man roster to start the season, and we'll see how he does.
I agree. I think that um, I think that he's got so many more opportunities coming to him. So it's going to be exciting to see how that goes. And obviously, he was brought up because of his power potential, what he was displaying in the minors. So there's just so much more there than we got to see. The only other question mark about this outfield that looms over this outfield is the question mark of Jordan Walker. Now, every article and radio station is clickbaiting with things like who's going to be an All-Star first in 2023, Jordan Walker or Tyler O'Neill, and it's just kind of like, what? This guy hasn't even seen AAA.
Hmm.
Um, I get that he's great. He finished last season with a 306 average, 388 on base percentage. 510 slugging percentage with an OPS of 898. He had 19 home runs and 22 stolen bases. So going back to that 30-30 player, Jordan Walker question mark.
Yeah,
Um, but I just think that it's still too early. Like
way
he's
too early.
obviously he's showing every single sign. His strikeout percentage was down from the prior season to last, and he's making all the right improvements. But I don't think that we can bank on him being in the outfield this year, unless something absolutely drastic happens. Like if there's an earthquake and there's a San Andreas fault that opens in Busch Stadium and all three of our outfielders fall into it, I think we call Jordan Walker
Yeah,
up.
yeah, yeah. Right. Yeah, that's kind of the only way I personally see him making the 26-man roster on opening day. Not because I don't think he's ready. I mean, I'm sure he could hold his own. Maybe I don't know, man. Like you said, it's way too early. We need him. We need him to do well in AAA first. I mean, he's obviously been insane. Everything so far. I mean, low A, high A, double A. He's shown that he can play at these levels, but we first need to see triple A, and then he has to just force our hand to pretty much be like, okay, this guy's not stopping, and let's say Nootbaar might be struggling, then let's call him up, and it would
Mhm.
take all three outfielders to or one of the three outfielders to struggle quite a bit, maybe even two of them, since you have Burleson and Yepes.
Mhm.
Like that's a lot of people Walker would be skipping in the depth
Yeah,
chart.
and I was just
To
about to say if Burleson can't figure it out, I could see them swapping places maybe. But like, yeah, he's got too many stones to skip to get uh to get into the majors. So
Yeah,
I guess I just hope that people kind of calm down a little bit with the Jordan Walker talk. Don't pressure him either. Like give him the time that he needs in order to prove himself. I believe that he will. I think that he'll be just fine once he gets to the majors, but
yep.
I think that he still just needs some time. So, any other thoughts on the outfield? I know that I'm excited most because it seems so contentious. I think that each guy is going to be playing for their spot every day. I'm taking that from the mouth of Ali Marmol himself. So I'm excited to watch the entire team, but the outfield in general, because it just seems so jam packed and action packed.
Yeah, the outfield's pretty exciting. I just can't wait to watch these guys play, man. I'm itching for it so much. It's just there's so many weird like question marks with this. I don't really want to call it question marks. They should be good question marks, because I think the potential of this group, these three guys starting in the outfield in 2023, I mean, the potential is so much fun. And I just can't freaking wait for opening day and just all the news to come out in spring training and see everyone on the field. I don't know. I wish we could go down to Jupiter like we mentioned, but that's not this
Yeah.
year, but maybe in a few years.
I could see a trip being planned to maybe Memphis to
Yeah,
watch
Memphis,
a
Springfield,
Jordan Walker play, which would be really fun.
and Mason
Um,
Wynn, dude, if we went
yeah,
to Memphis.
yeah. So we'll talk about that a little off mic. But let's
Yeah.
get into what's going on around the league because today two deals got signed. I don't think we have to talk about Devers too much, so I'll just throw it out there at the beginning. But Rafael Devers signed his 11-year, over $300 million contract with the Boston Red Sox. They're excited to have him. But why don't you give me a breakdown of what you're seeing with the whole Carlos Correa situation because that's finally wrapped up.
Yeah, first off, I'm tired of talking about it. I'm not going to spend much time on this.
Dude.
Uh, like this is ridiculous. He goes back to the Twins, which was everyone's prediction in the beginning of the offseason, so it's a little ridiculous. Um, I don't even know. You have the salary numbers up here, but I'm not going to dive into it. Goes
Yeah.
back for 6 years. I don't know how much even total. What 100 and 200 something?
No, he's going back 6 years, 200 million, is what he agreed to with the Twins and just signed today. So yeah, he's at 33.3 million AAV with different incentives and signing bonuses thrown in and stuff like that. So the other thing is that just to completely round it out, I think he and Boris are lucky, unless the Twins are just nice, because obviously there's Minnesota nice, but like
Yeah,
there's no reason they had to offer him what he opted out for. Like
yeah,
especially after everything came out. Like what kind of play is that Boris, I mean, because this clearly shows that they didn't know that the ankle would be an issue because there's no way you opt out, try to get 13 and then 11 years, 300 plus million, don't get that, then come back to the Twins and they still offer you basically the same AAV that you opted out for.
after
Like
all the
how
physicals and all
yeah,
that
how
too. Yeah.
lucky is that? Especially when you're playing like you're he I mean they let everything out. Like there's no way that it's anybody else's fault that all this information got out about his ankle. Like
Yeah.
it had to have been Boris. So what like I just don't understand the negotiation tactic there.
I don't know. It's Boris, man. He gets what he wants. That's all I really have to say. I mean, he's one of the best agents in the league, or probably the best for getting his players money, and he did his job.
I don't get how the Twins are like, yeah, you opted out for of
I
our
think they're
agreement of 36 million, so we'll give you another 36 million even though we know your ankle is shit now.
yeah. There are
Like
clauses though, which
well
I
it's
heard
all
about.
guaranteed. The 200 million's guaranteed. So,
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
yeah. So, the clauses kick in after that, after year
Right.
6.
Right. So I'm done talking about that. I'm happy it's over. Good for the Twins. They are in the AL, so we don't have to worry about it too much. You're good with that, right? You don't need
Yeah.
any more. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good for them. So Wade Miley signs with the Brewers. It's kind of an interesting little trade. He was with Chicago last year, but I think he was hurt pretty much for the full season. 2021. He had a decent season, 163 innings pitched with a 3.37 ERA. But I'm licking my lips because he's a lefty, and I mean, our lineup. I cannot wait to
Full of
face,
righties.
dude. I can't wait to face these lefties. I mean, it's. I think we're just gonna tear up lefties this year. So I'm excited. He's to the Brewers. Honestly, bad move for the Brewers, in my opinion. Uh, I mean, it's a cheap deal, so whatever. They need pitching depth. It's whatever, but
Hmm.
I like it for us. Johnny Cueto went to the Marlins, 1 year, $8.5 million. The only reason this really stands out is because the Marlins have been open about trading for one of their top pitchers, trading away, like Pablo Lopez. He's been in a lot of talks, especially in Cardinals Twitter, which me and you both don't think is going to happen, which is just another Miles Michaelis. And honestly,
Yep.
Michaelis is much better. It's kind of being nice by saying it's another Miles Michaelis. I mean, I think
Hmm.
Michaelis is a lot better.
Yeah.
Um,
The just sorry to pop in, but I know that the Marlins said that they had three um, starting pitchers that they were looking to get rid of or trade. And there was one in there, I can't remember his full name, something Cabrera, who looked like the best potential for the Cardinals. But again, we've talked about it. Like, what do you get rid of? Because you got 40 guys, so you have to package away somebody else. The first person to go is Paul DeYoung, but like, what team's going to want him? So
well, Marlins don't want him. They just
yeah,
signed Segura, so yeah,
right,
they're
yeah,
out on him for sure.
right. So it's just
Well, we
there's
would
a lot of
have to give
yeah.
up one of those guys that we've been talking about with like Graceffo or Tink Hence or
Yeah, it would be
any.
prospects that have almost MLB potential, and it's just not something that the Cardinals want to do right now. There's too much potential for these young guys that we have.
Yeah, I agree. You and I are on the same exact page when it comes to that stuff.
Hmm.
It just makes other holes elsewhere. Um, so that's an interesting one. I kind of do think he will get dealt before the season starts, but we'll see. Um, an interesting one here. Gregory Soto got traded to the Phillies from Detroit in a five-player deal. Phillies are really going for it this year. They got some tough competition with the Braves and the Mets. I'm rooting for them. I really like Harper. I wish they would have won last year. But the main thing is STL native Matt Vierling. He went to CBC. He was packaged in that deal to go to Detroit. So congrats to him. We actually drafted him out of high school in the 30th round, but he declined, went to college, and got a much better deal after 4 years in college. And now, one of the more interesting conversations, more controversial as well, I will say. So Trevor Bauer was designated for assignment, and uh, Los Angeles has until tomorrow, which is January 12th, to trade him, or he is sent through waivers, and then he'll obviously clear waivers because that whoever if you picked him up while he's on waivers means you owe him his contract, so he'll clear waivers, and then he becomes a free agent and will receive the league minimum $720,000 for whatever team ends up signing him. So my question is, do you think he will find a team in 2023?
Honestly, once Correa put on the Twins jersey, I go, Bauer to the Twins?
Dude,
Like,
I like
I
it.
I see that being the case. And I don't want to say this because it's gonna sound bad, but like they kind of seem like the same player. Like
Yeah, for
they
sure.
they have the same kind of troll mindset, in my opinion. Um, but like I don't want to say Correa is the same guy because he's clearly got a family, a wife, whatever. But
Right. On
yeah,
field.
yeah, on the field they seem like the same guy, and obviously you separate that. Like he came out of whatever he was in, found not guilty, so he definitely deserves to play because there's no court of law that is holding him off the field. I'm tired of Cardinals fans like God, Randy Carricker. He put out a post, had like a couple thousand votes to it, but it was do the Cardinals pick up Trevor Bauer, yes or no, after he clears waivers? Um, I know that we've kind of gone over it. I voted no. My opinion is that is not the clubhouse atmosphere that the Cardinals really try to build. Obviously, the Cardinals way is very notable across the league. I don't think that Trevor Bauer fits that. So, um, yeah, like I said, I think that the Twins, I don't know much about their rotation, but I see that meshing well, with them being in advertisements or whatever, and just being as the kind of, again, this is not the right term, but like punk players, um, troll players, whatever you have it. But I don't see a lot of teams really giving them a bid, other than the Twins.
I mean, yeah, I really like that was the first time I kind of pictured him with the Twins, and I don't see a reason not. And I don't know, I think people might be a little stuck on, what happened outside the lines, but when it comes down to it, this is a business, and this would be the biggest bargain,
Hmm.
maybe ever. So I don't, I will never hold it against the team. MLB says he's good to go. They reduce his suspension. Leave the past in the past. He's a great pitcher. He could really, I mean, to the Twins, man. If he went to the Twins, he'd put them way ahead of the Guardians, in my opinion. They're
Hmm.
already a little bit ahead now, getting Correa, but he would really put them ahead. But
Right.
yeah, we'll see. I mean, we'll be talking about it probably leading up until he does sign. I'm sure every episode will kind of have updates with it. So
Yeah, for sure. Well, other than that, I'm excited. We are definitely in the home stretch for, complete pun intended. Um, Wanting the Cardinals to take the field as soon as possible. It sounds like there are some guys that are already down in Florida working, which I love. Like I want to be working out right now too. Um, for those who don't know, we are playing men's league baseball here in St. Louis every summer. So we have our
stop by.
we have our own workouts that we want to get started here too, as January is kicking in, and so there's a lot of baseball that's coming up, and I just love when it gets here. So, um, with that, I don't think we have anything else that we really are going to get into. Next week, we're going to talk about the infield, and just talk about how amazing it is. Uh, but other than that, I think we're done here. I thank you for listening. We appreciate you joining us. You can find us on Twitter. We've gone viral? Question mark.
How many likes do you need for being viral?
I don't know, but
Probably at least a couple thousand, but
yeah. Thanks to Jim Edmonds for our first very big tweet. Um, and you can find us on Twitter at red_jacket club. Clearly, we're on YouTube, on Spotify for those audio listeners. But we appreciate you joining us here. Thank you for joining the club, and we'll see you next time.